Most definitely, I can see how it can grind people's gears. Speaking of gears, you got Gearbox. They showed the trailer for the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Oh, I never saw it.
Showed a gameplay trailer. It looks pretty good, and this actually solidifies the me solidifying that bingo slot as far as the Borderlands game.
Yeah.
Because when you play it, you're not playing as Tiny Tina, you're playing as somebody else, but Tiny Tina is kind of like the overarcher of it, like the narrator or whatever.
I still remember. I still remember when this was announced. I thought it was a new DLC. I thought it was like that. I thought it was like the DLC for Borderlands 2. Had a long fucking name, like Tiny Tina presents bunkers and badasses. Something.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely looks like it's a. It definitely looks like a DLC, but it's a standalone. But yeah, definitely it definitely looks something to that degree. But it looks pretty good. It's supposed to come out in March of next year, so it looks like March is going to be a decent month for games for Sony.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this is a Borderlands game, which means it's definitely have DLC. Question. So let's say this game comes out in March, right?
Yeah.
I would argue a DLC would drop by the end of the year, because that's good enough time to make and have enough players finish the game, but yet want more.
Yeah.
So let's say this game comes out in March. Let's say a DLC for it, which I bet there will be because it's Borderlands.
Right.
It's not a bad thing, but a predictable thing. Will come out by the end of next year for the game. I guess it's a question slash statement. How do you see Gearbox really thriving post Borderlands? Like they really have it, because they really have it.
What would they do after Borderlands?
Because Gearbox is exactly what they do after Borderlands. Because do you think they're just gonna keep it going like a Nintendo Mario fucking situation? Because Borderlands, now to Gearbox's credit, they've tried to have other IPs that just haven't stuck the landing. Like again, Bloodborne was not a bad game. It came out a week. It was like, it just came out a week before Overwatch,
right?
And just got just got ignored from that. And then the production hell that was Aliens Colonial Rings, remember, and it touched 10 developers before it got to them, so I can't really say that that was a hot potato of a game. And then there was that PS5 game that wasn't bad. It just wasn't as good or great as people wanted it to. Like, what was it called? Godfall?
Oh yeah. That one. It wanted to be greater than it was.
I will say this though, aesthetically speaking, looks amazing.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. It's like, it's a melee fantasy, I would say loot shooter, but there's no shooting. But I mean, it's like a fantasy, loot RPG.
Yeah.
But again, then it's like the lining. So again, in 2 years time from now, what do you think Gearbox will do? Keep milking Borderlands, or do you think by then they'll have a new IP to like kind of just kick them in the right, like to stick the landing?
It's a great question. I think honestly, I feel like they're just gonna keep milking Borderlands. I mean, if they can continue to milk a franchise but still provide really quality games, I mean, fuck it. I think they might be able to attempt some type of a new IP after, say, if once we get another like legitimate Borderlands. But it's a good question. I feel like for Gearbox, it's still their bread and butter. I know Borderlands 3 wasn't received as well as the last one. So I think if they do another Borderlands, they really need to get their shit together.
Now Borderlands 3 is not bad. But let's say Borderlands 2 for me is like a 9 or a 10. Mm-hmm. Borderlands 3 is like a 7 or an 8.
Okay.
The gameplay makes it an 8. The story makes it a 7.
Okay.
Just because going from Borderlands 2 and the DLC, all amazing DLC, especially Tiny Tina's, was great.
Yeah.
Story wise, again, not Borderlands not known just for its gameplay. It's known for its story, its script, its characters, its villains, and the villains in Borderlands 3 were just like, I don't. It was like, I'm not saying pandering, but it was like, let's reach these kids, and like let's have the villains be annoying streamers, prank video. I'm like, what the like,
they went there. I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah, like the main villains of the game is like, oh, we're gonna kill this guy. We're gonna kill this guy real quick. What up, dudes? It's fucking thing. You know what I mean? So it's like we went from handsome Jack to like annoying streamer twins.
Oh, that's annoying.
Now, again, the story got a little better once you got to know their backstory and stuff like that. But again, it was just like, but for the first half of the game, or for the first 3/4 of the game, until you get this big M. Night Shyamalan like twist origin story of how they have powers, because there's only supposed to be a certain number of like quote unquote like angels and shit.
Right.
But for the first 3/4, they're just really fucking annoying.
Yeah.
I think if they're gonna milk Borderlands, Randy Pitchford needs to cut Anthony Birch a fat fucking check. Now, for those of you that don't know Anthony Birch, I mentioned him before. He was the writer and the reason Borderlands 2 was amazing.
Yeah.
He was the writer for Borderlands 2. Speaking in Tiny Tina real quick, he wrote that character from the ground up for his sister, Ashley Birch. Ashley Birch, his sister, both, kind of got internet quote unquote fame via their show of like, hey Ash, what you playing?
It's really, yeah, I remember you mentioned that in a previous episode.
Really funny, like quick videos. Go watch them; they're just really funny.
Yeah.
And he wrote Borderlands 2, but that was and so I think and for him stepping away, as a writer, I think to a point it's shown. Because here's what I mean for me, the prequel, like it was literally called Borderlands prequel. I'm not saying it was a bad game, but even at the time a diehard Borderlands fan, I feel like it didn't need to exist. Like no one asked for it. Like no one asked for like a random pre-sequel. There you go, the pre-sequel game. And to a point, this is like on the same page as that.
Right.
Again, I know it's not out yet.
The weight of Tiny Tina is kind of what's carrying it, right?
Yeah, like I'm not saying it's bad because it's not out yet. I really haven't seen anything, so I can't argue good or bad. But I can say it's like, again, I didn't ask for this. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would argue I would be more excited for a Borderlands 4 than a spin-off thing.
Oh, I agree, 100%. I think that's for most Borderlands fans. I think they would agree with you as well.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I'm just worried. I'm just nervous, worried for the future of one of my favorite developers, one of my favorite games. Again, it's like they're synonymous for many reasons for Borderlands. And again, 2-3 years time. Again, I don't know what their future looks like in 2-3 years.
I think you have a valid reason for that, man. I really do. We'll see what happens. I did want to talk about some of the big tunas here that were launched. So let me just cut to the sexy chase
real quick. Sorry, I'll say just real quick. Sorry that was long.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick. Sorry, it was a little long, but again, Borderlands is like one of my favorite fucking sagas. So.
No, that was absolutely warranted. That was great. No, I loved it. I'm sure you heard about